I'd like to react to this guy Nenad Mitkovski. I'll post a link to you, Nenad, and see if you have any interest in dialoguing a little bit. I was just at work and doing some mindless data entry type of stuff. This hotkey setup. I was flunking it down, and the code was whooshing through the screen. So I was just sort of plunking around YouTube all day, and I've been experimenting with fasting, and so I was searching stuff related to that, and you came up, Nenad, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I'll just call you Nad for short. But I came across some of your videos in which you express your philosophy, and it was interesting and made me think a little bit about my own back and forth with Eastern philosophy, thinking in those terms. Because I've been meditating and fasting. I've had an interest in people like Jack Cornfield and related items. What am I trying to say? Well, I wrote up a couple bullet points. I don't want to read too much while driving, but you have this kind of white light thing going on, which I have as well to some degree. You talk about the heart path and the idea that there's some kind of unifying thread to all of the religions, and the key thing is to know yourself, self-knowledge, sort of Socratic, know thyself. And you have a kind of tri-fold philosophy. You say you know yourself, and then you have the discipline through practices like fasting to actually adhere to that knowledge of self, and then you say you follow yourself. I don't quite know what that means, but it seems to involve some kind of process of self-actualization. And I guess I just want to try to put it back in my own words, what it sounds like you're saying. Try to exercise my expressor a little bit. You use these terms, impressor and expressor, which seem a lot like yin and yang or something. You say that that philosophers must build their own world, and you quote Nietzsche. And part of your system is this idea of the expressor and the impressor. And I guess I wonder why not use more. Why use those words in particular? It seems to give a kind of like a sort of scientific surface to what you're saying, which is that we act in the world and we're passive, or you say that we're like material reality itself. We have a particle form and a wave form, and I don't know. I'm prone to use sort of scientific language myself, and to dress these things up in certain ways, and in the end, it's kind of a poetic decision with what language with what wineskins you try to put these things. Because say you're meditating and you're breathing in and out, and I no longer try to stifle my thoughts or to if you look up a quick and dirty meditation, mindfulness, quick start guide online, it always says, like, that you center on the breathing, that you put your focus on the breath or something like that, and you let your thoughts glide by. And I might do that to a certain extent, but more and more when I meditate, I'm actually meditating on my thoughts. I'm trying to create a kind of anti-gravity chamber where my thoughts can swim around unheeded by the practical necessities of my otherwise daily life. So it's a process of trying to isolate thoughts and examine them and see how they relate to each other. It's similar to what I'm doing now. In the act of speaking, one is trying to synthesize things, and because you have this expressor, this incarnate, you're using your body, using your tongue, your tonsils when you speak, your hands, your nose, your whole body. If you're really in it, down to your toes and your genitals are all kind of clenching and unclenching. when you get into a hearty discourse with an interlocutor, Socrates style, Gangnam style. And you're trying to synthesize things. You're trying to, it's especially when you're speaking, when you're acting and using the more expressive part of you. It's you don't quite know what you're going to say until you say it. And I have thoughts related to this. I see this awful panhandler guy. I was so bad for him. Just give him a wave. You don't quite know what you're going to say until you're going to say it. Like if you're in the outfield in a baseball game, fly ball, your hand catches it before your mind can even really register that that's what you're doing. And that's part of why I've started making videos, almost as a kind of mental hygiene, just because I think I really benefit personally from letting my hair down in that way and not having my thoughts be so internal all the time, but letting them become incarnated, become physicalized, in other words. In ways that I normally, in my workplace, say, or at home, feel very hampered from doing it. Because you're in conversation with people, you have obligations. Anyway, I'm getting a little bit far afield. Let me try to return to my bullet points here. You talk about Socrates or these different thinkers, and you have a kind of synthetic thing. It seems like you've achieved a way of understanding what they're doing and what you're doing, and it seems like a very Buddhist thing to me. And it does strike me that Buddha, that long-term practitioners of the Buddha arts, what have you, do attain a kind of mastery of self-insight or something. I always remember some anecdote given by Jack Kornfield, where he was talking about his experience with a Zen master, and the dude, someone said to him that Christian monks actually had it right, that Christianity had it right, and Buddhism was lacking. And the Zen master said, like, you're probably right. In other words, like, he he was able to use his impressor and absorb that into his impressor, to his garbage disposal of a meditating mind, and not let it really affect him. And there's something to having that degree of serenity, like, and you talk Nad, about the sort of the phoenix cycles that we go through, that we think we have it all figured out, and then something breaks down and we have to repair, and it's only by going through a number of these death and rebirth cycles that we finally attain to a kind of serenity, a kind of enlightenment. We use the word enlightenment. And it seems like, well, maybe there's some truth to that. I don't know. Part of what I'm trying to figure out is how true that is, or how far one can extend that. Or in what way that's true, because my nagging suspicion, Nad, is that it's somehow emasculated. It's somehow it's being neutered. It's being a bit of like a eunuch, to go too deeply into that space. In other words, you become entirely passive. So I'm not trying to charge up a spirit bomb right now. I just have a jiggly car. I'm waving back and forth in this freaking video. I'm gonna walk into the Giant Eagle soon and get some beer. But this sort of like this drive towards an ultimate kind of synthesis of like total purity. I don't know. I mean, I'm a Catholic, and in the Catholic Church, I guess we have that. We have monks who seek that kind of thing. But then again, you're not a monk, and I'm not a monk. And it seems like you're proposing, and I'm proposing, some kind of way to operate in the workaday world while still having your eye on the cosmic ball, your finger on the cosmic trigger. And ideally, I mean, I kept on having this thought when I went through this programming boot camp, and I'd meditate on the roof in the sun. I got a terrible sunburn several times because I'm an idiot. But I would go back into this coding room, and would be programming in their computers, and I would just think, man, I just want to attain enlightenment, like really all I want to do is just have a laid-back schedule where I can think and meditate and attain enlightenment. I just want to be blissed out all the time, basically, because I've experienced a state of being blissed out, and it's very pleasant. It's very nice, when you sort of hit these higher states. But the thing about it is I don't know. Well, I don't know what the thing about it is, I guess. I don't know what the thing about it is. I just... but, I don't know. Just have a sense of humor. There's something neutered about this, and you see it in Socrates too. in his death, and the contrast between Jesus' death and Socrates' death is non-trivial. Because Socrates died, to show the city that he was not a threat. And Christ died to totally disrupt Jerusalem. Oh darn. I missed the turn to the supermarket. Should I go back? Maybe I'll go to the gas station instead. I don't know. I drink a little bit too much, I guess. I'm gonna have my beer in the evening. I'm gonna have my beer for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's one of the things I crave. Even though I'm fasting, I need that reward. I need that light at the end of the tunnel. But I don't know. I was talking with my priest about suffering, and he was saying, the Christian suffers for love. And I wonder if there's a difference there. I don't know. Love, love, love. Blue Monday. YouTuber Blue Monday. You were talking about love. I had some thoughts about that. They've all vanished. Oh yeah, I wanted to relate, maybe for the maybe the second time, an experiment I was trying, a spiritual experiment I was trying last year, where I was, and maybe it's ongoing, I don't know, maybe I'll revive it, but the experiment basically was to pinpoint mimetic models in my life, in one form or another, people who are living, though. People I looked up to for wisdom, for whatever, mainly for wisdom, I guess, for insight, and to make a concerted effort to reach out to them and to have a short phone call for 5 minutes at the very least with them. And I did it with this guy, Roy Showman. I did it with this other, they're all these Catholic weirdos, because that's me, I guess. But I did it with this guy, Zachary King. He's like an ex-Satanist. And I tried to do it with this guy, Douglas Rushkoff, who's this media theorist from NYU, or not from NYU, he lives in New York. He has all these very interesting ideas about the economy and why the Renaissance historically was actually a huge step backward for the financial philosophy of Europe, in a nutshell. And I couldn't reach him. He was too in demand. I just got to his assistant over email. I tried to lay out my reasons for contacting him, but I guess they weren't compelling. But I did talk to one of his friends, this guy, can't remember his name now, Dr. Mark Filippi. And he has this whole idea about waves and particles. I don't know, there's so many, the reason I don't know, not the reason. I'm a Catholic, and I have a propensity, I think, to get interested in a lot of different ideas. But it's disorienting, and it's confusing to know exactly how to synthesize these things, how to put them together. And when you realize how many mismatched socks you have in your laundry basket of a mind, when you sit and meditate and you think about all these things that have flown into your head over the years, and you're like looking at this big IKEA manual, and you're trying to you're like grabbing for your Phillips head, and you look down at the screw and you see it has like an octagon or it's like a little swastika in the screw maybe, and you're like, I don't have the right tool for this. So you just have this junk heap of a mind. You just try to sort the junk the best you can, and to get at something that's really real. Part of the challenge of thinking is being able to hold things in parentheses and not forget them. So, for instance, I was... what was I even just talking about? I put a parentheses. Now, it's also in programming. You encounter this a lot. You're thinking, you're programming a function, and you have to put things in brackets and then in parentheses within the freaking brackets. You get all the way down. You're going to the gas station soon. You get all the way down, and you forget a bracket. So what? I've forgotten my bracket. When you see wonderful orators, they have this wonderful facility with that kind of thing. They say one thing, or stand-up comedians, they parenthesize something. They come in with a joke, a jab, a right and a left, an uppercut, a bicycle kick to the mainframe, and then they're, the Long Island iced tea that they had tossed into the air before it all lands back in their hand, and they take a sip. What was I? I was talking about Douglas Rushkoff, I guess, and this sort of spiritual experiment. Dr. Mark Filippi, one of these guys, his whole idea is it's all about the wave form of human beings. The key word is coherence. How coherent are you in any kind of interaction between two people? Just like with two waves, the more dominant wave will force the other wave into resonance with it, and so with human relations, the more coherent personality will, as if by some alchemical reaction, will imprint itself. Again, back to this expressor imprinter idea that you express so imprintingly. That there's a kind of coherence, and if you can attain a sort of coherence, and his whole idea is you have to think about the moon. It's all these moon phases and blah blah blah. And I don't know, it has something to it. I got my skull cap, my boner hat. You ever notice that beanies make heads look like penises? Like they're like little condoms, especially when you wear a hat like this, and then you pop it up, and it's like this. It's like a condom being filled. I don't know why I shared that gross thought, but it just popped into my head. Just popped into my head, baby. So this is the kind of talk you get with me, Nenad. But it's fun responding to you right now. I'm enjoying this. This is cool. I think I'm like ahead of schedule too. I've just been recording for 24 minutes, and it usually takes me with traffic a lot longer to get to this gas station. So I'm doing swimmingly. But I did this for a while, and it's almost like, I was bathing myself in this this moon energy, this bath of the coherence of, I was taking these people who existed as simulacra up in the stratosphere, up in the internet world, existed sort of just as signs, and I was bringing them into an interactive level, and there was something about that, that just, I don't know, that just got me high almost. And that's an important way of how I face the world, and maybe how other people do too. Like, it reminds me of how it was so important to me for a while to live in New York City, and it was because I had seen it throughout my life in movies, and I had, people I knew from high school and college who lived there, and seemed to have this sort of like, to be traipsing around in this dreamland that I knew nothing of. And there were some nice things about New York. I lived there for 7 months, but it was also a disillusioning experience, and I think I was maybe going after it because I wanted the disillusionment of it. I wanted the experience of the Phoenix-like experience of my world to, I don't know, or I left, and that's something I sort of have in my back pocket now. I have this experience of kind of knowing what it's like at street level, and not being beholden to the image of the thing as it's projected on a silver screen or a golden screen. But having lived it, I see the good and the bad more clearly. And it's I don't know. It's a little egotistical on some level, because it's like I needed that for my ego so that I wouldn't feel inferior or something. That I know, right? Now I know. I know what I'm the wiser. I don't, whatever. But so I'm reminded of all that. Just as I start to think about this stuff. But you have this kind of scientific language, but at the same time you talk about how when you can attain to this enlightened state through meditation, through fasting, and through developing your own kind of world-building philosophy, that you arrive at a kind of, that the goal is a kind of immortality. I mean, you use that word, and you check your words. It seems to me when I'm listening to you, it seems like you're a little hesitant to say certain words, but you do say immortal, and I'm just thinking from a Christian perspective, immortality is more than symbolic. It's something to be desired, really. And you also talk about evolution, and I can't hang with that talk, partner. You know what I mean? Adam and Eve were real. And it's funny moving in the headspace of thinking who's more and less coherent. Because you have the opposition of creationism and sort of unguided evolution. Or I don't know, I don't want to presume too much. Maybe it's more compatible in your mind, but oftentimes I think the view of divine creation begins in the modern context in an underdog position. So you're kind of directing your words and your thinking upward. But the more and more I talk about it and sort of like cement my position and feel more solid in what it is as I'm saying and what I believe, the more I feel that in fact sort of the materialist, pure unguided evolutionary perspective is in the true underdog position. I don't know, I would just invite you to think about it. I don't know what I'm saying, really. I'm just reacting. I spent a lot of time as I was plunking around on my computer listening to you talk, and so I just kind of wanted to talk myself, and hopefully you find some interest in this Ned, or my other followers. Yeah, but the political, I guess. I like what you had to say about poetry. Poetry as gift. And politics is kind of the enemy of art. It's something I can sort of get down with. But at the same time, even though you don't want politics to dominate art, one has to have a political stance. Like, complete non-involvement is itself a stance. William James talks about this in his lectures on pragmatism. That some choices are forced and some are unforced. Like, whether or not you jump from a burning building or burn inside is a forced decision. You can't. If you're in that situation, you have to either jump or not jump. To fail to act is itself to act. And in some sense, politically, in the political world, to fail to take a stance is itself to take a stance. And so, as long as you're taking a stance, you might as well try to figure out what the right stance is. So that's a sort of a related thought, but I don't know. I'm gonna come in for a landing soon, I guess. Cut this off. I don't know. I guess that's all I really had for now. Douglas Rushkoff's ideas about the economy are worth fleshing out in a future video and seeing what kind of response I might get on that. But I'm gonna go get a 6-pack and return to my family Homer Simpson style. Later.